In 2014, Larian Studios released Divinity Original Sin. Around the same time, there was a resurgence of CRPGs, with games like Pillars of Eternity releasing the next year. This resurgence sparked the question about the beloved CRPG franchise, Baldur's Gate, and if it will be returning. In 2019, Larian Studios gave us the answer by announcing Baldur's Gate 3. The hype train was set in motion. Fans of Baldur's Gate, D&D, and Divinity Original Sin series all started anticipating what the new Baldur's Gate would be like. In February of 2020, Larian Studios once again answered the call with an almost 2-hour gameplay reveal. But after this reveal, many people started jumping off the hype train. The new questions are why and will Larian Studios address their concerns? I will be assuming the answer to the second question is both a yes and a no. Yes, Larian may at some point acknowledge their concerns. No, they will not change the game for them. Let's look at the concerns that these people have and talk about why this is probably the case. The primary concern is ironically not the bugs that were shown during the presentation, but rather the combat system that it chose. Many Baldur's Gate fans seem to be expecting a real-time combat with an active pause system, much like the original games. But was this a realistic expectation? Maybe before the license was handed to Larian Studios, but definitely not after. PC Gamer wrote in June of 2019 that Larian Studios was gunning for the license as early as Divinity Original Sin's released. Larian had developed their own engine, which may be able to do real-time combat. It does also run a game, Dragon Commander, hinting that it is capable of more than just the system that the Divinity Original Sin series utilizes. But the turn-based system of the original Sin series is one of the standout features. I think going back to the licensing, that this was always the vision for Baldur's Gate 3. The other concern was if the game would continue the story of the original series. June of 2019, Screen Rant published an article about how Larian Studios described the game taking place 100 years after the second game, and it would be using 5th edition rules. This is a transparent setup that the old games and Baldur's Gate 3 would largely be separate, but keep open the possibility for cameos and perhaps some villains. There's also a prequel D&D adventure released called Descent into Avernus that pushes forward beyond the stories of the original 2 games. On top of that, the trailer shows a whole new antagonist, the Mind Flayers. So again, I would argue that the expectation was unrealistic going into the gameplay reveal. Finally, the third biggest concern I saw was that Baldur's Gate 3 was too much like Divinity. This I can see the instant gravitation towards. On a surface level, the style doesn't do a ton to differentiate itself. Aesthetically, I can see the argument. On a UI level, I think back to licensing. This has been something that Larian has been after for a while, and they were rejected for being too green. The original Sin series acted as a proof of concept to the Wizards of the Coast. So logically, those same elements that Larian Studios was praised for that translates across CRPGs would largely be the same. Mechanically is where the argument really falls apart. The mechanics in Baldur's Gate 3 are undeniably D&D. Breaking down the combat mechanics, we see the difference right away on the UI. Instead of Divinity's action point system that combined movement and actions, Baldur's Gate uses D&D's action, bonus action, and movement system. Spells in Divinity are cooldown based, while in Baldur's Gate they reflect 5th edition's spell usage slots and the need for long rests for them to be refreshed. Hit chance and damage rolls also reflect D&D's now famous D20 dice rolling mechanic. Communication and exploration are also different. Divinity's system required a threshold that your character had to reach for skill checks. Once at that threshold, you can get access to any item that check was required for. Baldur's Gate 3 uses D&D's D20 ability checks, meaning it rolls the dice to see whether you are able to pass or fail a check. These rules may not be visually apparent, but they drastically change the game. I more see this as a realistic expectation of merging an engine the studio is famous for with the rules and world of D&D. All three of these concerns are core to Baldur's Gate 3, and if Larian Studios wish to address them and change the game based off of these concerns, they would have to do major overhauls, which I doubt is going to be what Larian Studios does. More realistically, they will keep the systems that they have already set up and keep to their vision that they had in mind.